Hey everybody, it's Romania Black, and we're on episode 11 of Tsurune. The last episode was so good! The last episode was amazing, and it may have been my favorite. Yeah. I'm so torn now, though, because like we talked in the last episode, we have two ships now with Minato. The Seiya Minato ship, it's there. It's there. It's like Mamako Haru for sure. And I still do like Shu and Minato. I really do. I like that ship a lot. But I'm like, Shu, I need Shu to have, like, I need Seiya to, like, stand up for himself in front of Shu, and for Shu to get that it is okay for Minato to be friends with Seiya, because the one thing with Shu at this point that I'm not all aboard on is the fact that Shu wants like Seiya to get out of Minato's life, and I'm like, Minato and Seiya are like, they are tied together. Like, even if you don't ship them, they are definitely friends, and they're definitely there for the long haul. So I'm like, Shu, you're a little jealous and you're getting a little bit like you want to push Seiya away, and you just need to accept that Seiya is going to be in Minato's life. You can still like be flirty with Minato and get him to like you, but you need to accept that Seiya is there. And then he's going to be there for Minato, and he's not going anywhere. And I think that's what Shu wants. He wants Seiya to leave. And I'm like, no, you just need to accept that Minato can have friends, right? He doesn't have to just stick with you, Shu. So I like Shu and Minato, but I need Shu to like have like a little dose of reality that it's okay for Minato to be friends with other people and be super close to other people, even if it's not romantically. So the only other comment I have is that Natsuki talked about how there's a 12 level cap and rank system in Japan that have to do with colors, and the top color is always purple. It's considered the most noble of the colors, which makes sense. When I'm from a Western audience, when I think of the color purple, I think of royalty. I think of like, you know, kings and queens, and you know, you have like the purple cape with like the white trim that has like the little black thing. It reminds me of like British royalty a bit. So I get that, but I was tying that to like every team that's like the top competitive team in a sport has purple in their uniform. And that makes sense because it's the most noble. It's supposed to be the strongest color. It's like Run with the Wind, Haikyuu, this series, like it's all there. So that makes sense. I'm like, okay, cool. And I think like isn't karate purple belt is like right below a black belt. It's like right up there. So maybe. But yeah, those are my comments. I really, really loved last episode. I loved that Seiya got his groove back. I love Minato and them talked. I'm all about it. I just need Shu and Seiya to have a come to Jesus meeting and realize that they both can be with Minato and be in his life, and it's okay. Or I need Minato to tell Shu that. Somebody needs to tell Shu that so that I can ship them. Because right now, I want to ship Shu and Minato, but Shu needs to like lay off trying to like butt this person out of Minato's life, because that's not cool. No, like Shu, you need to tone it down just a bit. But with that being said, we only have 11, 12. We have 3 episodes left in the OVA before season 4 starts, and I'm really, really excited for season 4, for season 2, not season 4, for season 2 of Tsurune. I've seen where there's been people sharing like things on Twitter about it. I've not looked at it because I don't want to be spoiled. I want to go in with as little knowledge about the series as possible for season 2, because I haven't finished season 1. So that's where we are there. But I'm really excited for this episode. I hope that you all are too, but I didn't want to waste any more time. I'm like, after episode 10, I waited a couple days and I was like, I can't wait. Can you blame me? But yeah, so we are going to start episode 11 of Tsurune and just see what happens. And we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's do this. It's not cool, Tsurune. It's not cool. No! Okay, no. No. You can't. It's going to be a damn bait and switch, right? It's going to make us think that there's something horribly, horribly wrong and that he's horribly, horribly hurt. And then maybe at the start of the next episode, it's actually going to be revealed that no, everything's fine. Everything's fine. It's just everything is okay. Masa was in a car accident, but he's okay. He just won't be able to make it. So he asked the one. I was like, what did he ask the favor from the one guy that ran the shop? My theory was that he was like, hey, if I don't make it back on time, can you be there with the guys? So maybe this all worked out somehow with that to do that. But it needs to be something not major, because Minato is gonna feel horribly guilty if he told him to go and then he ended up getting in an accident because of it. Like, no! So dang it, Tsurune. Dang it, why would you do that when we have 2 episodes left. Next episode's the penultimate episode. No! And we haven't even gotten to the tournament yet. Damn it! So, okay. All right. I didn't want to bring Whiteboard Kun out for this one because I don't think that we need Whiteboard Kun. It's a pretty solid episode, straightforward through and through, but there is a lot to talk about in terms of this being like Masa's episode. And talking about Masa's episode, and kind of in the craziest of ways, Masa is like a combination of a lot of characters on the team. He's a combination of like Kaido, of Minato, and Seiya, oddly enough. There's not really so much Ryohei and Nanao in Masa, which is fine, but our 3 main guys who have had issues this whole season, like Nanao and Ryohei have had issues as well. But theirs, I feel, are secondary. I feel like maybe in season 2 we'll focus more on like Nanao and Ryohei and their growth. But this season's really focused on Seiya and Minato and Kaido and kind of the issues that they all have. And I feel like Masa connects with all 3 of them because he shares similar issues as well. But man, we just need to go through this episode and talk about it. But I was like, are you freaking kidding me, Tsurune? I like nearly cried in this episode because Minato's thing at the end, I nearly cried and I was feeling really emotional. And then you spring that on us. You spring that cliffhanger on us? You expect me to wait a week to find out what happened? I need to take a break, though. I don't know if I can go straight into it from this. I need to, like, process before going into episode 12, because it is the penultimate episode, and I don't want to rush right into it without taking time to be like, okay. I don't want to do that. I don't want to, like, run straight into it and not take the time with it. But at the same time, I don't think I can wait a week. But yeah, but Masa. So Masa's character is really interesting in this series. And I like that we're getting more layers with him. Because I didn't bring Whiteboard Kun out. Now I'm regretting it. But Masa's character, processing everything that's happened over the last several episodes. One being Seiya saying that he hates him. Which now they're in a much better place, right? I feel like Seiya and Masa are in a better place. But he still goes back to that moment of him saying that he hates him. And he goes back to his grandfather saying, are you doing Kyoto out of the love for it? And Masa just breaking down and not being able to handle it. And the thing of it is that it's a combination where you have Masa connecting with Minato because of the target panic and understanding that love of archery and the fear and angst that the target panic can bring, and him connecting to Minato through that. You have that aspect of it. You have the aspect of wanting to get better and be competitive and seeking out revenge against someone else that Kaido has. And then you have the aspect of questioning, getting mad at the coach for like questioning your love of something when you're sitting there putting the effort into it, like Seiya. So you can see how he connects to all 3 of them. But he keeps on doing it. It's so interesting that Masa says his grandfather hated him, right? His grandfather hated him. And there's a part of you that wonders if Masa wanted to hate his grandfather as well. But then you go back to Tommy's words that say obsession, adoration, and admiration are all similar. And Masa chooses to say the words, I'm obsessed. Because I don't think he's at the point where he can say, he said when he told Shu's grandmother, he said, my grandfather hated me. But he didn't say, I hate my grandfather. Because I think that's not the case. I think he admired his grandfather, and he became obsessed with trying to surpass him and surpass his expectations of him. And that adoration and admiration, he loved his grandfather, but he didn't think it was reciprocated. And I think that he's been searching whenever Shu's grandmother was like, well, you don't know if he hated you or not. And he's like, did he? And so you can tell that he's been searching for that proof that his grandfather didn't hate him, to feel like those feelings were mutual between the 2 of them. But she's like, well, I can't say that. And I'm not going to say what a third party said. That's not my business. I'm not going to be that gossipy woman, but you can go ask him yourself. And I think it speaks volumes that Masa ended up becoming a priest, just like his grandfather. So there's all these complex emotions within Masa where he's obsessed with getting revenge on his grandfather's teachings to prove that he could surpass what his grandfather's expectations were of him. But there's also this admiration and adoration he had for his grandfather that he doesn't necessarily want to admit, but he shows that through becoming a teacher, through becoming a priest, through doing several things that his grandfather did do. And that just shows, and that dedication he still has towards Kyudo is proof of it as well. So Masa has this really complicated, connection to his grandfather where he's like, my grandfather, I think he hated me. I don't know if I loved him or not, but all these actions I'm taking are both out of love for him, but out of also this obsession with showing him he was wrong about me and that if he hated me, he shouldn't have. And it's like, and then the fact that he didn't go to his grandfather's funeral, like just so complicated. And it's just, I love that this show takes this episode to explore Masa's character and also teach the boys a very important lesson about adults in that, adults don't always have it together. And we present ourselves to younger people like we do because we want to set a good example for them. But oftentimes we are just as flustered and complicated and we don't have our stuff together like younger kids, but we try to set a good example so that they think that, no, it's fine, everything's great. But like Seiya points out, he's like, as we grow older, we're going to realize that no, what we thought was mature is not actually the case. And that's so true to life, with the exception of Tommy Sensei. He's a monster. Tommy Sensei's a monster, and he is the adult of adults. He instantly hit a plateau and just aged up, and everybody's just trying to get on Tommy Sensei's level. But yeah, and then we see Masa firing the arrow, and he says the reason I took the coach role was for revenge. To get revenge on his grandfather, and then that's when he misses. So that may not necessarily, the fact that he missed the arrow at that point means that I'm not sure if Masa's totally convinced that he took on the coaching role solely for revenge. I don't think that's totally it. I think that that's part of it, but I think Masa's realizing that no, he loves archery and that maybe he does admire his grandfather and wanted to become like him, but become better than him and do what his grandfather didn't do, right? So, and God, that where he's saying, I'm the one obsessed. And I love that he comes to this conclusion as KyoAni KyoAni's like, well, we're about to deal you some angst and trauma at the end of this episode. So how about we bookend it with some fan service? You all okay with that? And we're like, yes, we are. I feel great about this because I always kind of feel weird when it's characters in a story like this, because Seiya and Minato and Shu and them, they're still in high school. So for me, who's a much older reactor content creator, it's very weird for me to gush over these boys that are 15 or 16. But Masa-san's in his 20s, so it is perfectly okay. And I'm like, yes, thank you, show. Thank you for giving us this. And Masa's a big, broad dude. When you see him and Minato sitting next to each other, it's sir, you are quite tall, dark, and handsome. And I love that he's I know who. And who's I've done nothing. He says, I'm the one who's obsessed with my grandfather. And so I love this line that he tells them there as he thinks about it. He's and just the way that KyoAni animates his head, just him going through the myriad of emotions. God, KyoAni does such a good job of animating that. It just looks so good. I was spellbound this whole episode. I was sitting there staring because it was just so good. He's I guess that before I go on lecturing them about it, I should do something about it myself. He's I really have no right to lecture these kids about not seeking revenge, about, feeling these certain ways until I can't lecture them about their attitudes until I handle my own attitude. And I like that. I like Masa's self-aware about that. And he's right, who? And who's I just want you to feed me. He's that's all I'm wanting. But man, okay. So in any case, this episode, I really like that Seiya has come onto his own. And he talks to them about the calculations, that he's their accuracy has increased. But wisely, Masa has told them not to tell the others what it is. And I like that he explains, he's very open to them about it. He's like, well, how much has our accuracy increased? And he's I'm not telling you because Masa said not to talk about it. He said, especially to Kaido, who, as he says, is prone to self-sabotage about these things. And it's like, yeah, it's like, he's like, we're getting better. Can't say by how much because then Kaido will self-sabotage. Very wise, very clever. And as he's talking to them, he just adds more and more spice to the noodles, right? So we get to see what they're eating. Kaido has like a tomato juice. Kaido and like a bun, like a meat bun. Nanao has the really cute bento box with the chopsticks. That's nice. I like that. And then it looks like Minato and Ryohei have the same. And he just keeps adding more and more spice. And Ryohei is like, what is that? And he goes, oh, it's my personal shichimi, which is spices, right? He's like, it's my own. There's a store that lets you create your personalized blend for it. He's like, my ratios are top secret. And I love that Kaido and Ryohei and Minato are like, well, Minato's like, this is him. And Kaido and Ryohei are like, but Nanao looks concerned about how much spice he's putting in. Nanao's looking at him like, are you really going to eat all that? Like, he just looks so concerned in the moment about it. Because it's literally a mountain of spice. There's so much spice on there. I'm like, that would burn my mouth. But he's like, when I was a child, a friend in cram school saw me doing it and found it strange. So I've held off using it anywhere besides home. That speaks volumes that he had used this special spice before and he was judged about it. Like a friend judged him being like, what are you doing? And so he stopped doing it. But now that Minato's helped lift that weight off his shoulders, he feels comfortable being himself around his friends. And I'm like, that's so sweet. I love that. And I love that Now picks up on that. And he's like, interesting. And he's like, but I feel comfortable doing it in front of you all. And I love that the three of them, like Nanao and Ryohei and Kaido, are like, is he going to eat all that spice on there and still live? Like, they just all look absolutely concerned. I want to get a picture of that, of how concerned they look. It's really funny. But then you cut to Minato, and Minato just, he's like, he looks fine. Yeah, I love that. And he's like, see, I told you. And he's like, that's bull. And he's like, Onogi, I think you should think before charging ahead more often. And he's like, Rrr. I love that Kaido gets all flustered with Seiya. He's like, I told you that's bull. And so then, yeah, and now it's like, it feels like a weight's been lifted off his shoulder. And Minato's like, I agree. I love that. And now it's like, it's nothing. It just seems like everybody's being all buddy-buddy. We're all getting along right before the tournament. Good thing nothing bad's going to happen right before it, right? I was like, no, Ryohei, don't jinx this. Which it's none of their fault. Not really. But anyway, so Minato, of course, Minato forgets his gym clothes back at the dojo. Conveniently. Got to go back and get them. You know, leading us to this conversation with Tommy Sensei. Saying, what came over you? Why are you here coaching? As he's like sitting there cleaning up with his little Luffy hat on, cleaning up the weeds. He said, you said it was for revenge against your master. And Minato's like, oh. And he's like, well, I gave it some thought, but I wanted to learn more about my grandfather. And so the revenge aspect of it, Masa's like, yeah. He's like, I didn't really want to coach at first, but then I realized, again, with that obsession, he's like, I want to know more about my grandfather. And he's like, your grandfather had senpai that were both his rivals and his friends. Which is Shu's grandmother and this other guy. You should go ask them if you want to know more. And so, yeah, so it of course, we go back after that when as Masa's showing everybody and everybody's doing really good. And Minato's just Minato's realizing that Masa puts on a really good front. Like in front of all them, Masa is doing a really good job of pretending that nothing's wrong. And Minato's like, well, we've all spent this last season bearing our souls and getting to know each other and having big heart-to-hearts. Why can't you be involved, Masa? Why can't you get in on this? Right? And so Minato just seems like he's troubled by the fact that Masa is acting like it's no big deal when really there's something under the surface that's bothering him. Because Minato knows what that feels like, right? And he just had that talk with Seiya about it. And I love the fact that as they're walking home, Seiya's like, we're not going to have this miscommunication garbage. That Seiya's like, what happened? And he's like, you seem really concerned about Masa. And at first Minato was like, oh no, it's nothing. It's nothing really. And Seiya's like, is it really nothing? Because Minato, we just had a whole episode last week that talked about how we need to talk about our feelings. And I'm like, I'm really glad that Seiya kind of calls it out. It's almost like breaking the fourth wall, where Seiya's like, we just have had several episodes where we need to talk stuff out. Don't be acting like this is nothing now. I love that. I love that Seiya's like, let's be real, Minato. Is it really nothing? And he's like, okay. He's like, if you're worried about something, say so. Nothing good comes from holding things in. He's like, I would know. I've been holding stuff in for a while, and we all saw how that went down. So yeah, I like that. I like that he convinces Minato to talk to him about it. And Minato's like, well, he's like, it's tearing me up inside not to talk about it. And so he finally tells him, and I love that it's this like sunset scene that we see the passage of time. We see them on the bridge like they've been talking about it for a while, and there's the big sunset. I love that. And Seiya's like, well, Masa acts like he doesn't have a care in the world. He acts so carefree. But I've always felt there was more to him than that. Because Masa is a lot like Seiya in that regard. Seiya, this whole season, has acted like the responsible, reliable, mature one. And the reality has been that no, he's had a lot emotionally under the surface. And Masa's the same way. It's kind of like, and Kaido hides his emotions with his tsundere-ness. Masa's not a tsundere, but he still hides it to an extent. He smiles, but he's not putting 100% of himself into it. He's always hiding something emotionally. And he's like, but revenge, that's a strong word. Mm-hmm. And Minato's like, yeah. He's like, when I saw him shoot, it was like he was so serious. His shots were serious and beautiful. Almost scarily so. Yeah, just like he's putting all this resolve into it. But at the time, what we find out is that he was planning to quit Kyudo. So these last 10,000 shots, he was putting his all into them as a way of letting go. And then he never finished up with it. And he's like, this revenge might have had something to do with the 10,000 arrows. So we cut back to Minato getting home, and then he sees the two texts. One's from his dad that says he'll be back a little bit later, and then the other one is from Shu saying, did you tell Sensei yet? So I give Shu props in this episode because he did say like, hey, you need to go tell my grandma that you've started up Kyudo again. And he didn't follow him there. He let Minato go on his own. We'll talk about that scene with Masa and Shu's grandma being like, well, I took him in because my grandson really likes him. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so then we cut back to Masa digging through all of the old things, and we see that inside the box is like his glove. And it looks very old, like the old leather glove, right? And he says, nothing special, I suppose. I wasn't hoping. So, well, Masa was hoping there was like a letter or a diary or something to learn about his grandfather from. But instead he just finds the glove. But he does see some pictures. He does manage to find some pictures. And his grandpa, what I like about this series is that the grandpa's eyes do kind of look like Masa's a little bit, but he doesn't look totally like him. Although, Shu's grandmother, dim genetics. Dim genetics are strong because Shu looks exactly like his grandma. Like almost identical. Like the way their hair lays and everything. Almost identical. I'm like, man, them genetics. I'm assuming it's not Fujiwara because it must not be Fujiwara because her surname, unless they adopted in the family, would be different. So, but yeah, Shu's genetics, they're strong, clearly. And so there's the three of them. Yasaka sensei and Saionji sensei. So this guy here, he knows him. He's like, and that's Osone sensei. Okay, so Osone is the one that he's going to visit. It looks like him. So I like that this guy at the shop, he's clearly older than Masa. I was debating that like at the early part of the season, like how much older he was or if he was around the same age. He looks like he's probably maybe 10 years older than Masa. Okay, so he's probably in his late 30s, early 40s. Okay, that makes sense. So he knew who they were, and he tells him he could go find Osone, but he's pretty far away, right? And so then I like that he goes to see Shu's grandmother, and he has like the present for her. He's like adjusting his tie and everything. He's being all respectable and looking nice to go visit her because he respects her. And then he sees Minato. Minato's like, hey, what are you doing here? And he's like, oh, what are you doing here? So it's like, fancy that. We both come to see the same lady. And she shows up like, oh, hello. Look at you. Come in. I love that she's in the kimono. It's so pretty. And he's like, I'm the one who contacted you. And she says, oh, you're Takegawa Masaki-san. She's like, yeah, interesting. She's so mysterious. I love it. I love the grandma. She also has a beautiful oak table. And so we find out that Masa, similarly to Minato, they both have been students of her. And we find out that Minato, she was the first person to let him in. And she's like, yep, this kid just burst into the dojo out of nowhere. But my grandson felt a connection with him, so that's why I let him stick around. I love that she basically says that. Masa's like, I'm surprised that she'd take on a student. And the grandmother's like, well... I just love that the grandmother is trying to play matchmaker for her grandson. And she's like, this Minato kid, he's kind of rude, but my grandson likes him for some reason. And so she's just so great. I love the grandma. She's like, I sense talent in that child's shots. And destiny. She's like, I saw the red string of fate taking shape. I love her. I love her so much. She's great. And she's like, it was like when I saw you shoot for the first time as a youngster. So again, connecting Masa and Minato, how they have a thread together. A thread, you see. And he's like, oh. And so she says that Yasaka-kun was already teaching you. She's like, I would have taken you on as my student, but your grandpa was already teaching you. And so he's like, I wasn't at the funeral. So we find out that he's like, my grandfather and I had been estranged for years before his passing. And I just couldn't go. And Minato's like, oh. And he says my grandfather hated me. And so I rebelled against him. And in the end, before we could repair our bond, it was over. And I like that Shu's grandmother, she says, oh, he hated you. She's like, are you certain? Do you know? And Masa's like, well, did he say something to you about me? And she's like, well, no, but... She's like, Yasaka-kun and I fell out of touch about 10 years ago. Like, we stopped talking. She's like, so this is strictly third-hand information, so I don't really... It's not my place to speak about it. But he's like, who told you then? She says, Asone. She's like, Yasaka was never open with me. But perhaps because they were both priests... Then he shared his feelings with him. So again, it's interesting that Masa, for someone that has a strange relationship with his grandfather, becomes a priest to take up that same cultural lineage, right? Interesting. It just adds to the complexity of his character quite a bit. And he shared his feelings with him. And so I love the car driving scene where they're driving back to the bridge and Masa is just so focused and thinking about everything. And so around this time of year, Yasaka would go to Aomori to help Asone-kun with his rights. And I just love Minato's looking at Masa like, what are you thinking, man? Like, what's going on? What are we doing? And Masa is just so consumed with trying to figure out more about his grandfather that he didn't know from before. And he's like, I never knew. Did Grandpa really do that? There's more to that man than the face he showed to you as a teacher. Yeah, she's like, some people wear their hearts on their sleeves, Masa, but you're good at hiding your true emotions, and your grandfather was kind of the same. Like, he was maybe a more private person. And then there's like a cultural difference too, of like a generational difference where, Masa, he opens up to his students about his private personal issues, whereas I could see where his grandfather would absolutely not do that because that's a generational thing. Like the older generation is like, oh, we don't talk about these things. It's personal, right? So that's very much the case. She's like, your grandfather wasn't exactly maybe like you knew him behind closed doors. So they go and get some coffee. I like that they go to the Star Coffee. It's great. And then they kind of hang out there with their coffee outside of the shop. And he's like, when I started getting target practice, my grandfather questioned my dedication and basically told him that target panic was a weakness and that he wasn't practicing enough. And then he said that I couldn't take it. And so he rebelled and ran away from home, which is kind of crazy. He just completely left home and left everything. And then I guess, I guess he came back, and then his dad had remarried, or his mom had remarried, and then that's how he got Rin in the family. He says, I begged for lessons here and there, and eventually recovered from my target panic. And by then, my grandfather had died. So by the time he recovered, and by the time he'd gotten to where he was over it, and he went to go tell his grandfather was gone. And we see them at the funeral. We see the guy running the shop along with Shu's grandmother. And I love that shot of him. I love that shot of him younger, sitting in the car and slowly leaning back into the shadows. And he's not able to go inside because he's like, I've ran from my grandfather all these years. Do I deserve the right to go in there now when I've been away from him all this time? And probably away from his family too. He's like, yeah. He's like, I felt a hole had opened up in my world. Like something was irreversibly broken. Yeah, I love that shot of him too there. The shot, KyoAni, the shot of him and Minato on the outside the coffee shop, that whole sequence is beautiful. Like the way they shot it, it's gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. But yeah, he's like, that feeling consumed me. But then my skill flourished. And that's where that obsession started. So he's trying to figure out, like, I got better and better after my grandfather died. And what we come to realize as the audience is that he got better and better and his skill flourished because he became obsessed with his grandfather and trying to figure it all out. Like figuring out, okay, what was my grandfather like? What does this mean? And like, he's like, I got all this skill flourishing because I was thinking about my grandfather. The emptiness fueled my perfect accuracy. Everyone praised my ability. And I was invited all over Japan to participate in demonstrations and tournaments. But it's that pain of empty release. Like, he's like, I was doing so well, but there was no meaning behind it anymore. He's like, that obsession with my grandfather and what I'd been doing practice-wise to get over my target panic, it all came together. And I was doing really good, but he's like, I lost the purpose that I had, which is a lot like Minato. He's like, Minato lost his mother and then was fueled into Kyudo and was doing really, really well. And then he developed target panic. And Masa, conversely, was fueled by his grandfather's death, got really good and got over his target panic. But in both situations, both Minato and Masa kind of lost their way and lost the passion that they had for the activity. Just comparing, apples and oranges. Saying that and I love that shot of the arrow flying through the air. He said, I lost sight of the purpose of archery. And Minato knows exactly what that feels like. He's like, and then in order to give up on archery, I started those 10,000 shots. And he's like, I was going to have a requiem for my grandfather, and then you came in with your passion and your questions and wanting me to teach you, and completely changed my life. Yeah, he's like, in the midst of it all, you appeared. And seeing you struggle with target panic awakened something inside of me. Now, if you were shipping Masa and Minato, I see where you would get that from, because that line there alone, it's like, okay. Again, I think Masa's a little too old for Minato at this point. Give us a time skip where they're both in their 20s and I'll feel much better about it. But right now, I definitely see how you would think, like, oh yeah, I get that now. Yep. But yeah, he's like, you reminded me of myself. That's why I let you take my last shot, because I didn't want to finish it. And attempted to make a fresh start. I'm not like my grandfather. I won't be the kind of teacher that he was. And I wanted to prove that. And so then now he's struggled because in the last few episodes, he realized that he was a lot like his grandfather was Seiya. And so he's trying to overcome that. But I love that. I love that Minato inspired him. Like, Minato inspired him to not give up on Kyudo and to keep doing it. And Masa inspired Minato to do the same thing. Look at that. Look at that. And he's like, I wanted to get revenge against my grandfather, but I was wrong. He's like, getting revenge isn't the right answer. He's like, that's not how it should be. I'm not entirely certain myself yet. But I know one thing for sure. I'm fixated on my grandfather. And if I want to keep being a coach and if I want to keep being an archer and doing both of those things, then I need to know who my grandfather was. I love that the way that KyoAni draws like the wind blowing through Masa's hair, and it looks like when they first step onto the outlook, the balcony there, his hair's like perfect, and then as the scene goes on, they make his hair messier and messier from the wind. KyoAni, you just mwah, know what to do art-wise, don't you? But yeah, he's like, I'm obsessed with my grandfather, and I'm not gonna be able to keep being a teacher and archer unless I know who he was, unless I know how he felt about me, unless I answer these questions for myself. I can't find peace for myself until I get those answers. And he's like, that's what I've realized. And then I was like, okay. He's like, Osone sensei, was it? Your grandfather's best friend. Are you going to go see him? And he's like, I'm not sure. I love when he looks across the skyline there and his hair's flowing in his face. He's like, I thought I'd contact him. But to be honest, the idea of what I want to do, I'm not sure yet. He's like, what's right? I don't know exactly how to go about it. It's still a little beyond me. And that's been weighing on Minato's mind. He's like, what do we do with this, right? And that's when Seiya comes to them saying like, hey, he's like, when we were in all elementary school, we thought middle schoolers and high schoolers had it all together. And then when we got to middle school and high school, we realized, no, that's not the case. We still have lots of issues. So he's like, that's the same way with Masa. We think that Masa is an adult, so he doesn't have any issues, right? But that's not the case. Adults have just as much issues as kids do. So, and then, there is a thing here where it's like, Minato did tell all of them about Masa's issues. And I could see somebody being like, well, Minato shouldn't have told everybody. But in the same vein, I'm like, I could see where Minato's like, I can't hold it in. Like, Masa told him this big life-changing thing, expecting a 14, 15-year-old to hold it inside. It's like, no. So I'm glad that they have this moment where Minato comes clean. He's like, I had to tell him because I didn't want to just keep it inside and, wreck stuff. And so Masa's like, oh, okay. Well, Masa's like, okay. He's like, did you get in touch with Osone? And I love that Masa looks over everybody when he says that, and they're all looking at him, and he's like, I'm sorry. I asked the others for advice. Keeping it to myself was tearing me up inside. Because the series has made a point of saying, like, keeping in these emotions and feelings is not good. And yeah, I could see somebody arguing that Minato shouldn't have told everybody, but if he hadn't, it would have all been this big drama bomb that would have came out earlier. So I'm glad it comes out now, and Masa's like, okay. He's like, now's my time to step up and be an adult in the moment. He's like, no, it's my fault for dumping that on you. Masa's like, I threw all my drama at you, so I shouldn't have expected you to not, be able to well it up because you guys care about me. And I just love that Kaido, during all of this, Kaido looks like he's about to spring on Masa and give him a hug. Kaido's just like biting at the bit to do something. Like, he looks so concerned. He's like, I did contact Osone sensei. And he asked me if I'd like to handle this year's Nosha and suggested we could talk then. And then Kaido's like, well, you're going then, right? And he's like, no. He's like, because it's the issue of timing. The rites in question are the day before the tournament. And he's like, and this part got me. This whole scene here got me because on the one hand, Masa says, he's like, you living kids are more important to me than my dead grandfather. He's like, I'd rather be there for you all in the present than, he's like, I can find stuff out about my grandfather later, right? And he was like, I'm sure that I can find another chance to meet with Osone. And Minato's like, you need to go. He's like, please go, Masa-san. He's like, you're not going to be able to just talk to him whenever you feel like it. I love this. He's like, I also had something that I want to do. And this got me like, I was tearing up. I was like, oh my gosh. He's like, I want to talk to my mom about this. And I couldn't because I lost her after that. He's like, I kept thinking that I'd be able to tell her about it. She was just there all the time. And that's so sad because it's so true. Like, you think that, oh, I've got all the time in the world to tell somebody about this. And then he's like, I could do it anytime. And then I couldn't. Oh. And then all of a sudden she was just gone. He's like, your grandfather was the same way to you, right? You thought you'd always have time to go back to him and tell him things and ask him questions, and now you can't. He's like, don't make that mistake with Asone and go after him. When you want to talk to them, when you have to talk to them, they might not be there then. Oh. And I love that Minato's like trying his hardest, and he's like holding the scar, like the injury. He's like, don't wait and do this, and then Asone not be there, and you never be able to know. Which is why I'm hoping that this accident is not something serious, because you know that Minato is going to feel guilty because he told Masa to go. He told Masa to go before it was too late, and now he's been in a car accident. And I'm like, is Minato going to feel really guilty right before the tournament? Is he going to feel really guilty right before the tournament? I'm like, and then I'm like, dude, with the shop, why'd you come in and tell them that right before the tournament? Couldn't you have found something to say like, hey, no, Masa's running late, just do your best? Like, couldn't you have found something else to say to those boys instead of telling them that their sensei's been in an accident? Why would you do that? No! He's like, when you want to see someone, you should take the first chance that you get. And Kaido's like, yeah, he's right. And they all tell him to go. We'll be fine on our own. And Seiya's like, please trust us. We're putting the things you taught us into practice. These few days before the tournament are minor in the grand scheme of things. Do you not trust your own students? And Masa's like, okay, you got me. He's like, fine. They're like, we have a great teacher. Aww. And it's so sweet. And they all like say that they'll be fine. And so he's like, okay, you decided to go. And so he takes off and he has some arrows there. He's like, yeah. And so he tells the guy that runs the supply store, he's like, kids these days, like, does that include me? He's like, you know it. So he clearly thinks that Masa's still a kid, which is so sweet. I love Masa's look there. Like KyoAni, stop making him look like the most handsome man ever. And so he asked him to do this favor. And I think that what he was doing was asking him that if for some reason I can't be back in time, will you watch over the kids? I'm like, if this is all a prank, if Masa's playing a prank on all of them with this accident thing, I'm going to be pissed. I'm going to be like, Masa, you are the worst. But hopefully it was just like, watch the kids in case I'm not back in time. Hopefully that's the case, right? Because when we see him like get ready to leave, well, first he goes to them and tells them, you know, are you guys going to be okay? And the girls are like, we'll keep the boys in line. It's fine. We'll keep them on track. And I like that we established that Nanao is like a wannabe prince. Like Nanao wants to be like the smooth talking guy with the ladies. And they're like, yeah, no, you're not. I love that the one girl always puts him in his place. And then he's like, that's so mean. And then I was like, fine, I guess I'll be the wannabe prince. And I love that Kaido like gives him like this soft smile, like, all right. He's like, fine. He's like, everything will be okay. And then Masa's like, make the final day count. Have a full practice. So yeah, so Masa, when he leaves and plugs in the directions, I had to go back and look at the screen and plug everything in. And like, his trip is 10 hours. How long is it? His trip is 10 hours and 28 minutes. That's how long it's taking him to go find Asone. Like 10 and a half hours. That is an insane one-way amount of driving. Insanity. I'm sorry, what? And so they all practice and everything's going really good. Why wouldn't it be going great? They're all doing well. They're all helping each other. Seiya's helping Kaido get his form right. Nanao's getting talked to by the girls. Kaido gets the turn of his bow naturally, and they're all like, good job. And Minato hits the bullseye. So everything's looking like it's going great. They're all inspired. What could go wrong? What drama could there be? Huh? And then they get to the tournament, and Masa's not there yet. And the one guy shows up. They can't get a hold of him through his texts or emails or on the phone. And then he says he heard from Rin. And he tells him to stay calm, even though he's running over there. He's like, try to stay calm, okay? But he's like, Rin called my place. And last night while driving, Masaki was in a car accident. And Minato's like, And that's where we ended. I'm like, dude, you couldn't just... We have 2 episodes left. How dare you, show? How dare you? Maybe it's not that big of a deal. Maybe it's just a little car accident and he's okay. But he's in like the hospital or something and he just wanted to tell him he can't be there today. And maybe they'll be super inspired and they'll do their best to make him proud. And that's what we're going to go with. They're all in such a good place and I don't want Minato to freak out thinking that it's his fault. I don't want that to happen. Tsurune! Why you do this? Why you do this? So yeah, this episode was really good. It was really good in getting some backstory with Masa, what his motivations are, what his issues are, that he wants to learn more about his grandfather, that he's gone on this like nearly 24-hour journey just driving alone, like a 21-hour driving extravaganza to go find Asone and learn about what his grandfather thought of him so he can have closure. And then everything, all the things, all the threads between the characters lining up. I just need Masa to be okay. And for Minato to be okay. And for them to do okay at this tournament. So I'm not asking for much, Tsurune. I'm not asking for much. But yeah, that's where we're at. So I'm very curious to know your thoughts down below, but I may have to watch ahead in a few days because I don't think I can wait a week. Nah. Nope. So dang it. So I'm very curious to know your thoughts down below, but oh my gosh. I'm curious to see what you guys think down below, but in the meantime, I hope y'all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe. Take care. And yeah, I'm going to be back very soon to find out what the heck happened with Masa in episode 12 of Tsurune. It's tournament time and we're in Ink City. What? I'll see y'all again soon. Bye.